get that squared up. Bonzer. There we go. That's aligned. Straight up and down. Sure. That's... Nope. There. So... Yes. Another day, another live stream. And make sure that... There we go. Messages all is open. I'll take a quick peek here at what's going on Discord. Oh, that popped up quick. All right. So, yeah, let's see why that popped up as unread. Oh, because I have not read that. There we go. Scroll through that. All right. No need for all that nonsense. So, another day, another live stream. Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner. I just realized I need to double check my sound settings to make sure that the microphone is picking up properly. Well, I say microphone, but it's just the onboard. There, see, it slipped again. There we go. Hopefully that's better. For some reason, my sound has, on my sound settings on the laptop here, has a bad habit of automatically sliding back down into the 30s and 40s. Rather than remaining up into the 85, 86 range to make sure I can actually be heard. But greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Storyteller's Corner, as I already said. My name is Joshua Calkins-Treworgy, also known in many places as Byron of Sidious. And today I am not presenting a story. Today I would like to talk a little bit about the concept of redemption in both fiction and in some real-world circumstances, though not quite as many. Topics of the day, news, history, not my strong suit, not my forte. I am a creature largely of the fictional realms, planted firmly between the covers of a book. Redemption is something that I touched upon briefly during my post-story reading, kind of spurg out all over the place yesterday. And it was discussing the character of the Wicked Witch of the West, of Ephaba, that brought this idea to mind for me. I was talking about how she was presented in the film adaptation of Frank L. Baum's The Wizard of Oz. The Wicked Witch of the West was portrayed as absolute, unquestionable evil. With the creation of the book Wicked and the other books in that series that would come along, as well as the Broadway musical adaptation that has gained quite a lot of notoriety over the years, and which recently was made into a film adaptation. It's so weird. It starts off as a short story idea from Frank L. Baum, who then writes a full novel and then a set of novels. That first novel gets adapted into a film. That film is historical and plays a major role in cinematic culture because it was one of the early... I can't recall if it was the very first film to utilize Technicolor for colorization, or if it was just the biggest primary example of, holy crap, this is what we can do with color in film. But it was a landmark story, a landmark movie that made history. And it's a cultural touchstone, a cultural lodestone, as it were, for Western culture storytelling. So it started off as an adaptation of a novel into a film that ended up receiving a kind of cultural update or backstory because it finally landed in the realm of public domain. So someone was able to write Epheba's background, her origin story, as it were. And that origin story was utilized to try and paint her in a more sympathetic light, to render an understanding of how she became what we know her as the Wicked Witch of the West. And it was kind of the story of the outcast, the other, the one who was picked on and who was different, which is a long-running theme in Western narrative storytelling tradition. That when someone is other, when they are an outsider, when they are an exception or a mutation, that renders them empathetic or sympathetic because they are contending with greater challenges than your average everyday person who slots into most society as just an everyday person. I have a certain amount of sympathy and empathy for that perspective, as do many folks who engage in reading as a pastime, at least nowadays, because there are not a great deal of folks who read for leisure in the young adult to adult age ranges these days outside of your romantic fantasies. Romantic fantasy is the heavyweight fighter of the realm of book sales right now, and book talk, and book reviews, and bookish chat, which is a space heavily dominated by the female demographic. This is not the kind of discussion that's going to delve into that, however. We're looking at this character, Ephepa, as presented as, hey, here's why she became the way she is. What we need to be careful about as readers or viewers is to not utilize that tragic backstory or upbringing or history for this character as a means to excuse their behavior in prior known a priori narrative. It can explain, yes, it can help us explain how this person came to be the evil fucker that they are. But it doesn't excuse it. And that, unfortunately, is the line that a lot of viewers and readers cross over. They go from allowing it to be an explanation and they hold it up as a shield to excuse the tyranny, the psychosis, the nastiness of this character. That is not what it is intended to do. Or if that was the author's intention, that's not a great goal to aim for. I don't believe that that was what was intended. But it's been a while, it's been a few years since I read the novel Wicked, and I've never seen the musical, so I've got no idea. If I want to have a better idea and a more thorough understanding of what I'm discussing there, at some point I am going to have to watch the musical. Unfortunately, I'm not looking forward to that. But in the long run, the Wicked Witch of the West doesn't get a chance at redemption. Not in The Wizard of Oz, anyway. Because she falls prey to getting drenched and melting. This is a character who did not get to see a redemption arc. But there are other examples in popular culture fiction that did get an opportunity at redemption. And the first one that I'm going to turn my attention to is one that, quite frankly, has a great, lengthy history of fandom behind them. And that would be the character of Anakin Skywalker, who became known better as Darth Vader. I don't want to delve too much into what Disney has done to Star Wars, because I'm not particularly fond of what Disney has done to Star Wars by and large. What George Lucas created in crafting the character of Anakin Skywalker was a character who filled a couple of different archetypes before being developed into his own full character. For starters, we have the archetype of Chosen One. Anakin Skywalker was born of the Force. His mother, Shmi, we don't in the original trilogy or in the prequel films get a clear-cut explanation from his mother or from any other character. And again, I'm operating within the canon of just the films. Don't scream at me about comic books or books that came out in the extended universe just yet. I haven't read all the extended universe books yet. I've only read the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the 2 follow-up books to that, and I just started reading the Han Solo trilogy. So I've got a lot of material to catch up on the old expanded universe. I also read Death Troopers, but that was largely because someone loaned it to me and said, hey, check this out. When you're into zombies and horror, this is Star Wars plus horror. You should like it. And I wasn't highly impressed. Anyway, so we know based on canon lore, pre-Disney, that Anakin Skywalker was conceived by the Force. That he was this chosen one, this savior character of destiny. That is a character archetype building structure that we're well familiar with. We have seen this in many other stories throughout history, many other mythologies and legends. And while it's an overused trope in many situations, we're going to start off with that as a primary building block. But Anakin also fills another trope in sci-fi fantasy storytelling when he loses his mother at a young age. Now, he didn't lose her in the sense of her getting killed. He lost her because he was torn from her to be taken away by the Jedi. This is a tragic, traumatic moment for this character. He is yanked away from his mother to potentially join this monastic order of space wizards known as the Jedi. Now, when he is initially brought before the Jedi Council, they at first say that they cannot train the child because he's already older than many other younglings were when they got started in their training. And Master Yoda says that in this one he senses great fear. The child was afraid of what was happening to his mother. This is an understandable fear. Within the confines of the world-building mechanics of Star Wars, as set by George Lucas. Again, I'm not going into Disney territory. Ignore that. In prior established canon, that fear that he is harboring has been historically pointed at as a early warning that this potential candidate for training, this force-sensitive person, is likely to be tempted to and swayed easily down the road by the dark side of the Force. But Qui-Gon Jinn, being very much the kind of hippy-dippy, very centered, neutral kind of Jedi Master at this point, has the confidence to say, I can train him. I think we should take a chance on this kid. There was an opportunity there, and he decided to push that. So Anakin gets to train as a Jedi. He becomes a Padawan. He's training under Obi-Wan after, in the second film and beyond there. But he takes up with Padme. He has this connection. He has this joy and this love, this romance with Padme that many of the other Jedi look down upon. They frown upon it. Now, if we're going to utilize canon from pre-Disney, we can go into the Knights of the Old Republic games, because that was before Disney got their hands on it, before the House of Mouse. From Jolee Bindo, from the first Knights of the Old Republic game, he had a wife. He had a romantic entanglement with another Jedi. We have seen that this is possible in accordance with Jedi teachings. It was allowed once upon a time, but look at what happened to Jolee. Look at what has happened to other historical examples of Jedi who had romantic entanglements and families. Oftentimes, it was remarked that it ended in tragedy, but not every time. Not all of them ended that way. And many Jedi walked away from the Order and from the Jedi life path because they found joy and they found meaning in something beyond this monastic order. They found for themselves a form of redemption, that they were not destined to belong to this cloistered order where they could do nothing but be these warrior monks holding up and defending the light side of the Force. And here's Anakin, and he is forming this connection to Padme, but he's keeping it secret. He's trying to keep it on the hush-hush, which is a form of deception. He's lying to his colleagues, to his comrades, to the other members of the monastic order of the Jedi, because it is taboo, it is verboten. So we already see that Anakin is sliding towards behaviors or choices that are disapproved of by the very Jedi Order that he has been training to become a full-fledged member of since he was a child, since he was torn from his mother's side. So we've got a child born of the Force. We've got the chosen one archetype. Traumatic event early on in his childhood, ripped away from his mother, who he learns later remained in slavery and captivity to Watto. He joins this order, trains with them for years, kind of becomes enamored with this Padme, but he's told over and over again, it's bludgeoned into his forehead, time and time again, that he must not form attachments or bonds of this nature. Why not? Well, because, likely, members of the council point back to historical examples like Jolee Bindo and other examples of relationships in the Jedi Order that ended in tragedy without telling Anakin. There were members of the Order who left the Order, who set aside their lightsaber, who walked away because they found redemption and peace in a life better lived as an ordinary husband or father. Anakin was not allowed that opportunity or that choice. That choice was hidden from him, which I'm certain could later build even more resentment. The point being that by the time Palpatine gets his wormy little tongue into Anakin's ear, and worm tongue will come up later, don't worry, I'll get there. We'll come to Lord of the Rings. He has wormed his way into Anakin's confidence as the hidden Sith. And at this point, Anakin's course is set. He is unwilling to take the risk that he may lose Padme based on this vision, this premonition, this prophecy. But as I have examined and exploited in my own works, prophecies are not always dead on. They are open to interpretation. And that lesson never seems to stick with these characters. But to our benefit. Because ultimately, we end up seeing the dark side, fall, and arc of Anakin Skywalker as he is turned into the apprentice of Darth Sidious. Yes. For many years, I've had folks ask me, Sidious, is that a reference to Star Wars? Yeah. The Cult of Sidious in the Templarian Tales, the original books from the Fifth Age that started my career as a fantasy author. Tanarak of Sidious. Tanarak of the Cult of Sidious. The Cult of Sidious itself, I named after, or was inspired by, Darth Sidious. I've been a Star Wars nerd for a long time. I was a fan since I was a child, so it just felt natural to kind of play homage to that. Hence Byron of Sidious, originally Byron Eggsler. But again, I'm getting beside myself. Getting ahead of myself, rather. Darth Vader crushes the rebellion underfoot at every turn in service to his master, Emperor Palpatine. We have a lot of history and lore that goes into the opening sequence of Star Wars Episode 4 and the continuation of that story into Episode 5 and 6. Until finally, when his own son is being slaughtered in front of his eyes by Palpatine, Luke calls out to his father for help. He's desperate. He will not survive this. And the Emperor is pressing his power into Luke. And it's this moment that Vader has to choose, that Anakin has to choose. Will he continue to serve the Emperor? Will he continue to serve this order that he has joined as a Sith? But in the end, he doesn't. He grabs the Emperor, hoists him overhead, carries him over to the shaft, and drops him down to his demise. Disney, Palpatine should not have come back. In the end, he was redeemed. He finally made the right choice. After years spent as the lethal enforcer and tyrant, impressing the Emperor's will over the entire known galaxy. There's a heavy load of raw evil that was committed by Darth Vader in the name of the Emperor and in the name of the Empire. For years on end, Anakin Skywalker, as Darth Vader, was a servant of the dark side of the Force and the Sith. Was he purely evil during this time? According to some of the extended universe books and comics, and even some of the post-Disney takeover stuff, no. He wasn't a creature of pure evil. He was a creature, however, of resentment and terror and fear. Not just imposing fear on others, but living in fear. Without the suit that he was walking around in, he had no way of being a surviving, living human being. He was dependent upon this machinery to continue his existence. That takes away from your humanity for certain. But in the end, after he throws the Emperor Palpatine over, down the pit, as he stumbles and he's dying because he was absorbing all that Force lightning as he was carrying the Emperor to the pit to throw him over. It's not only that it's Force lightning, it's any electrical overload. This bodysuit that he's inhabiting, it's his life support system. So you got to figure how much of that machinery is getting fried or malfunctioning and killing him. He made that choice at the very last moment to do the right thing, to depose the tyrant that he had been serving for years. One could fairly ask, if Palpatine was such an evil tyrant, why did Anakin serve him faithfully and willingly as Darth Vader for so long? Well, because he was operating under the false belief that his beloved Padme had been taken from him and was dead, and that the children, or sorry, child, because he didn't know about. Wait, did he know about the other immediately? I can't remember. Shit, it's been so long. Ah, bad Star Wars fan. But he didn't know where his children were going, what their fate was going to be. He was operating under the assumption that this was it. That if he had a child, it would be a child. And he didn't know what their fate was. After the battle with Obi-Wan on Mustafar, he woke up this dreadnought revenant amalgamation. His beloved Padme is dead. He's no idea what happened to his offspring. No clue. The only person who offered him a window to salvation for his beloved Padme was Palpatine. So, of course, there is a high degree of loyalty built in there based on all the trauma that he has undergone. To say nothing of the fact that, and this is hypothesis on my part, I'm not entirely certain Anakin was in control of himself when he slaughtered the younglings of the Jedi. I don't know, because you look at his eyes, those yellow eyes in that scene reveal before he clicks on the lightsaber, how much of Anakin was actually in control of what he was doing there? I don't know. That's a whole other topic for a whole other day. In the end, Darth Vader is redeemed because he chose to sacrifice his own well-being, his own safety, and his own position in the galactic order to kill the Emperor, to betray his master in both the dark side of the Force and his master in galactic civilization. He is taking the side of the rebellion and the traitors in this moment to spare the life of his son, who he recognizes as his one chance to undo at least a modicum of the terror that he has helped inflict upon galactic civilization. And he takes that opportunity, though he knows it will be his own demise. I say he knows this because he has seen Force lightning at work before. He knows what the Emperor is capable of. He has used Force lightning himself. He's well aware of the destructive power of the dark side of the Force, of Force lightning, and other dark side techniques. He knows damned well that by intervening, he is signing his own death warrant. And if both practitioners of the Sith, because of the rule of two that has been so long going at this point, if both master and apprentice Sith are offed in the same moment, the Sith are going to be gone for a while. Now, like any ideology, of course, the Sith teachings will survive. Someone may, in the future, revive this methodology, but for the moment, the Sith would be put paid to. Surely he recognizes that. But he chooses to do that anyway. He makes that sacrifice. That's part of the reason why we, as viewers, feel a certain degree of affection for Darth Vader, even as a villain. We can feel that because we understand that this character underwent a great deal of tragedy throughout his upbringing and his training and his young adult life. And he responded to that tragedy with evil. He chose evil. But at the last moment, when someone was trying to lead the charge against the tyranny of Palpatine and the Empire, when his own son, Luke, stood up to try and be the champion for and the savior of galactic order, genuine order, as deserved, not inflicted by the boot of the Empire. He had an option. Vader had a choice to make. Do I maintain my position of power and authority and tyranny? Do I let my own child suffer and die? Do I then let the galaxy continue to be pushed under the boot heel of this wretched, wrinkled thing? What have I been doing all these years? What have I allowed to fester? There is a moment of revelation there. You can see it in this was masterful direction. You can see it in the subtle movement of Vader's helmet from side to side, looking at Luke, looking to the Emperor, looking to Luke. This is a small encapsulation of what has been happening to galactic civilization on his watch. He has allowed this to happen on a galactic scale. And in that moment, it is compressed down into the microcosm of just that throne room. This is what he has allowed to happen. He's been helping it happen. And the boy that was so eager to learn the ways of the Jedi in order to protect people who could not protect themselves, people like his mother, people like himself as a slave child, people like Padme, who had been crushed under heel by this wretched thing. He had a chance now to put an end to that. It would cost him dearly. It would cost him his own life. But he was willing at the last to pay that price. Moving from science fiction into fantasy, I also touched upon the idea of fellowship yesterday. And Lucian, was it Lucian or Astro Sweat? One of the two of them brought up the fellowship, or may have been Belgian Dan. Could have been Dan. brought up the Fellowship of the Ring. It has been forever since I read the original novels. My familiarity with Lord of the Rings mostly stems from the Peter Jackson films, and that's what I will be referencing. Because, again, I think it was 11 or 12 the last time I read Lord of the Rings. I have a copy of it. I should read the fucking thing again, get a refresher. I can barely remember the name of Tom Bombadil, much let alone his impact or import on the realms of Middle-earth. But in The Fellowship of the Ring, in the very first film of Peter Jackson's adaptation, one of the characters we are introduced to is Boromir. Now, there are several characters in The Fellowship who are tempted by the glamour of the ring. Hey, Lucian, how you doing, sir? Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the show. Oh yeah, sorry. The Fellowship of the Ring. Several of the characters in the group, they see the ring. I mean, they all see the ring when they first, get to Rivendell, and they're looking at it. All eyes upon the ring of Sauron. And Frodo is charged or tasked with carrying it. He's already been tempted by this thing by this point. Yes, Boromir. Yes, we'll get to Boromir in a minute. Because, again, folding in. Frodo has been hearing the whispers of the markings of the ring. He's fascinated by it. We have Gollum's obsession with the ring, of course, because it twisted him from a hobbit into the thing that he has become. Aragorn, if I recall correctly in the films, he looked at it and was like, eh. He did not want to continue looking at it. He did not want to consider it. When Frodo asked Gandalf to carry it, Gandalf was like, don't tempt me. He didn't want that additional push of temptation. The only one to come into close contact with the ring who really didn't seem at any point to give a righteous shit was Sam. Samwise Gamgee. The true hero of Lord of the Rings, as far as I'm concerned, but that's a whole other topic of conversation for another time. But there is one member of the Fellowship, Boromir, who, oh boy, he is grievously tempted by the ring, and he hasn't even come into physical contact with it. Just the sight of it, knowledge of the legends of what it's capable of, and being in close proximity to it. The lure of Sauron's magic imbued upon the ring calls to him. Like a siren's song, it fills his mind with notions of glory and grandeur. It fills him with the capacity to think, I could save my people. I could save Rohan. If I were to use this weapon of the enemy, if I were to utilize the magic of the ring. But it's been entrusted to this fitsy little hobbit. And he gets pretty sneakily, pretty nasty. And comes within inches of threatening Frodo's life for the ring. And it's only when Frodo scurries away, runs away from him, and he loses sight of him and recognizes, oh shit, I just had a really, really bad moment there. I almost hurt this guy, this seemingly almost harmless creature there's a moment there where Sean Bean it can't be understated how beautiful the performance of Sean Bean is. Yes, of course. Gimli's reaction is, to try and smash it with a hammer. He goes the Yzma route. When that package arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer. It's genius, I tell you. Brilliant, I say. Or to save on postage. Anyway, sorry. Emperor's New Groove. Completely different reference. Spurging out there for a moment. But Boromir, when he recognizes how awful that moment from him was, he is immediately filled with disgust with himself. And again, Sean Bean's portrayal of that moment of revelation is brilliantly done. He recognizes, oh God, I don't know what that was. But you can see that he's also aware of that wasn't just the power of Sauron's magic and corruption. He recognizes that corruption, that moment of weakness, could only be exploited because he has that weakness inherent within himself. It is a flaw that was exploited by the enemy, by Sauron, by that wicked magic. It is a shortcoming of his as a human being, that he is contemptible enough, that he is base enough to have that kind of delusion of grandeur, that selfishness and greed is already present for the ring's power to grab onto and latch onto as an anchor point, to be levered into compelling him to do something that is dishonorable and, frankly, abhorrent. That he would muscle himself onto this hobbit, this peaceful little person who could not stand against him toe to toe, especially not in the close confines of when they are taking rest at camp. There's no way that Frodo could genuinely stop him from snatching the ring and bashing his head in. But even the recognition that thought had gone flitting through his mind causes Boromir to say, oh God, oh no, this was bad. And when the hobbits, when they are later on under threat from the Uruk-hai, Boromir, having come to terms with the fact that he almost dashed the entire effort of the Fellowship, he almost succumbed to his own selfishness, his own greed, his own weakness, recognizing, here is my chance to put things to rights. But it's going to be bad. It's going to be costly. And I might not survive. But he does the right thing. He stands the gap to try and give Frodo and the others the opportunity to take the ring and flee, to escape. He's not going to survive this. We as the audience already know it. It's Sean Bean on camera. He's a dead man. Although, to be fair, the Fellowship of the Ring is kind of, I think, if I know my filmology in terms of chronological release, this is kind of like the earliest sign that we have that Sean Bean is always going to be the guy who dies early on. Eddard Stark wouldn't come along for quite some time yet. But Boromir recognizes, I can make up for the awful thing I almost did. And here's the thing. Boromir didn't actually hurt Frodo. He scared the bejesus out of him. He stopped himself just shy of doing something abominable, recognizing he had fallen prey to this dark magic. But he just barely managed to hold himself back because he had such a lengthy period of time growing up and being raised as an honorable man. His sense of duty so hard pressed into his skull over years and years. Yanks and their love of ground beef. Yep. But he had such a connection to that sense of duty and honor as a member of the royal house of Rohan. There was just enough honor and dignity there to hold out from actually bringing harm to Frodo and snatching the ring from him. But there was also horror in recognizing how close it had come. How close he had come to dashing the hopes of all of the free peoples of Middle-earth if he had succumbed to that temptation at the last. And feeling so sickened with himself and recognizing that if he continued to be around the ring going forward, he might not always be able to stand the gap spiritually to stop himself from doing that. When the opportunity presented itself for him to stand the gap tangibly and physically to ensure the survival and the safety of the little ones, as he calls them. Boromir refers to the hobbits as the little ones. I would posit this choice of linguistics is not accidental. Again, it has been many years since I read the books, so I don't remember if that's how Boromir refers to the hobbits in the book. But at least in the film, Fellowship of the Ring, he refers to them as the little ones. Little. Conveying a sense of vulnerability against the Uruk-hai, these giant homunculus savages born of muck and mud and dark magic, whose only impulse is to destroy, enslave, devour. They will not spare him. If Boromir stands against them and he cannot defeat them in battle, he will die. He knows this. But he chooses to be that guard in the gap. For it is better to stand the guard and to perish to earn his redemption. Redemption is possible for a character who has made the wrong choice previously. But they have to choose to engage in an act that will be redemptive. Redemption is a choice. They have to choose to do the right thing. And it can't be performative. It's not something that they can just say, well, if I do the right thing, then people will love me again and I'll be a good guy. Hooray! No, there has to be a genuine risk that you're not going to come out the other side. And why do we set things up like that in our mythology, in our legendarium, in mythology? Why do the best stories have an opportunity for a heroic character to, yes, they could potentially survive, but they could also potentially end up dead. Sometimes they survive, sometimes they don't. When they don't survive, if they went into this moment knowing full well that they might not come out the other end intact, that is a choice of heroic sacrifice. And that does have redemptive quality to it. Not always, but usually, and in the case of Boromir, of Fellowship of the Ring. All right, I will be back in a moment. Have to hit the bathroom. Get back. Sorry about that. But a lot of modern heroic characters, they are portrayed not so much as being, they're not portrayed as being heroic from the outset. Or if they are being heroic from the outset, it's because it's some kind of fevered dream power fantasy being granted to, shown to us by the creator of the material in question. It's rarely, again, I turn to Star Wars to look at Rey. This is a character who was not presented to us with any kind of flaws from the outset. There's nothing really to make us root for her, other than she is the protagonist as established from world building mechanics. If anyone in the Disney trilogy from Star Wars was to be someone for us to identify with, it should be Finn. Because he is the one who actually has a potential redemption arc. He was a stormtrooper. You've got a setup here that has so much potential. And what did they do with that potential? They took it, they said, great potential. They put that potential in a bowl, and they pressed that bowl right up against their ass cheeks, and they shit all over it. Sorry. They did. It's easy to try and say, well, you have to look for the nuance in everything. Nuance is good. I'm not going to argue against nuance, especially in conversation. There's always room for some kind of deeper analysis or understanding of how a character got to where they're at. But if you don't give us any actual background or growth out of a character, then there's no way to give them redemption because there's no movement one way or the other. Finn started off as a stormtrooper. He rejected that path. He yanked off the helmet. He walked away. He escaped the First Order and the remnants of the Empire. And then that was it. They made him one of Rey's fetsy little sidekicks. Who the fuck was Rey? Where was there was no redemption or build arc for her character. It was there. She was just crafted. Lucian puts forth, I'm going to highlight this really quick. Lucian has an interesting thought here. A thought. Heroism is a momentary thing. A hero is the one who steps up when it counts. It's not a job. I would say that's a valid point. That's a good observation. A hero is somebody who does the right thing for the right reasons, because this is the moment when they can choose to do nothing, to save their own skin, or to try and do the right thing for everyone involved. Now, I recognize that sounds dangerously close to utilitarianism. No. Big difference. Heroism requires a sacrifice, or a potential sacrifice. It's not just stepping up when it counts. It's stepping up when there is a personal risk of failure, and that failure causing you, the potential hero, grievous harm. Because stepping up when it counts, if you're not at risk, if you don't risk anything by stepping up, that's not heroic. That's saying, hey, I can make this situation not a problem. I would have to throw in the caveat that heroism, yes, it's doing the right thing when it counts, when there is a potential risk of failure. And that failure being very costly. But again, that's sort of it folds in with what we're talking about here. Sorry about that. What was I getting on about? Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a second. It derailed, as these things tend to. There's a character in video games who I would like to point to as another example of a character who is a figure of redemption. And this is a slightly more esoteric character. Seitan Uzuki from the game Xenogears. Xenogears was a fantastic JRPG on the PlayStation 1 system with a deep lore, world building, mythology, tremendous story writing. The second disc of that game, unfortunately, kind of fell off gameplay wise because they were running out of time and space. But Lucien says, I would probably alter it to the one who pays the price when it counts, perchance. That would be that would probably be a fitting amalgamation of the two concepts. Seitan Uzuki in Xenogears is one of the agents of the leaders of the nation of Solaris. He is the right-hand man of Emperor Cain, who rules over the world below, back in the shadows. Solaris itself keeps itself hidden and secret from the world. Seitan Uzuki has been assigned by Emperor Cain to be the companion to a young man by the name of Fei Fong Wong. Fei, unbeknownst to Fei himself, is the reincarnation of one of the first humans to inhabit this world that the story of Xenogears is set on. He's the reincarnation of this elder human, and this elder human, Abel, Cain and Abel, get it? Has discovered a way, or during his first life, discovered a way to utilize the energy, the power of the planet itself that mankind had crash landed on. There's a lot of backstory to it. It's confusing, and I'm trying to keep it all somewhat straight in my head. To just to talk about Seitan. Seitan, his mission from Emperor Cain is to stay close to this kid, this Fei Fong Wong, and to prevent him from accessing his past life memories. And in the event, Fei should remember who he was. If he should gain access to his past life memories and experiences, Seitan's assignment is to then kill him, so that he is removed from Emperor Cain's path to utilizing the Deus engine to reform mankind, to reduce them to energy and sludge, to utilize to power the ship that the Solaris rulers, that this council of rulers can get aboard in their artificial bodies to return to the stars, to get off planet. It's really weird, it's convoluted, but Seitan has a choice to make because at about 3/4 of the way through the game, Faye turns to him and says, I remember. I know who I was, but that's not who I am now. It's just a part of who I am. And Seitan has to make a choice. He has to either choose to continue to carry out his mission, to now that Faye has remembered, because he does spend a great deal of the game's story trying to prevent Faye from remembering his past lives, from coming to terms or realizing who all these people from Solaris are, including Elheim Van Outen, a Solarian soldier who Faye meets early on in the game, who is herself the reincarnation of his first incarnation's wife. It's, again, complex and convoluted, but just play the game. It's great. That's all I can recommend. You want to get a better idea of the story and its convolutions and twists and turns, play the game. But Seitan has a choice. He can either carry out his mission and kill Faye, or he can refuse the Emperor's order and face the wrath of Solaris and be deemed a traitor. Now, Seitan was born and raised in Solaris. He was born and raised as a member of this higher echelon of society, literally looking down on people who live on the surface world below, referred to as lambs. But there was one thing that happened when Seitan accepted his mission that threw a wrench into the whole thing for Emperor Cain. Seitan met a lamb woman. He fell in love. They started a family. This was seen as a useful tool by his handlers in Solaris. They basically said, "Ooh, great! You've got yourself a perfect cover story. Use it." And Seitan said, "Okay, cool," because he got to have what he wanted. He got to have his romance. He got to have a family, while still maintaining a quiet, hidden allegiance to Solaris, because he was staying close to Faye and keeping an eye on him. But events and circumstances conspired to push him up against the conflict of choosing his allegiances. And Seitan made his choice, and he said, "No, I will not carry out this mission." He understood that would mark him as a traitor, that he would be marked for execution by any Solarian the moment they laid eyes on him. He gave up the nation of his birth. He gave up the honor of many titles as Cain's Angel of Death. That was a title he had. He gave up all of that because he had found something more redeeming than all those titles and all those honorifics and all of that highfalutin status and stature. He had a family. He had a wife and a child. He had friends and allies who, though they were viewed from the day of his birth as beneath him, as below him, they were people with whom he had lived and loved. They were people with whom he had shared a life more genuine and more fulfilling than that which he had been born and raised into as a member of the Solarian Empire. It was more gratifying. It was more edifying. So he was faced with this option, this choice of do your duty to the Emperor, to Emperor Cain. Funny how emperors always end up being the bad guys here, right? There's a lesson here to be learned. Anyway, but Seitan Uzuki says, "No, I will not do it." And he is marked for death at that point. Now, because it's a video game and because it was programmed and written this way, he doesn't get dragged off screen and executed or killed or removed from your party. he remains available for use throughout the rest of the game, knowing full well, though, that he has thrown away, he has sacrificed all of those titles and those honors, all of that station and position of authority and power. He throws it overboard without hesitation. He says, no, I'm not going to do that. He knows full well the truth of the matter, that without Cain, without Emperor Cain's activation of the Deus weapon system, that humanity planet again, that humanity will be stranded on this planet forevermore, as far as they know, because technology has not advanced to the point where they can do interstellar travel as they once did when they first crash landed on this planet. So he knows full well that if he chooses to take the path that he's going to follow, that he is stranding humanity to this planet. But taking a look around at the history and at the cultures that have sprouted out from humanity on this planet, he makes the weighted choice and observation of, well, wait a minute, that's not a death knell. That's not an end of existence curse to the people who live here. True, the international warfare is certainly not great between Ava and Merkaba. Between those two nation states, that's not great, but that is part of the human condition. And he accepts that is worth contending with in order to maintain the existence that humanity has built up on this planet. He knows full well he is condemning the earliest members of humanity on this planet, on the world of Ignas. I was trying to remember the name of the world that the Xenogears is set on. Is set on Ignas. He knows he is effectively cursing them to never being starfaring, possibly ever again. But seeing that the world is full of beauty and wonder, he makes the decision that, well, there's honor to be had and joy to be had in living here on Ignas as a country doctor and inventor and weirdo, because Satan is a weirdo. There was redemption for that character, because initially he's set up to kind of be a backstabbing, traitorous bastard to the main character of the game, Fei Fong Wong. Satan is set up to be a traitor to him, but he doesn't betray him. And boy howdy, that's the reverse of how many video game stories go these days. Every time you have a character who is some kind of mentor or guru, they turn out to be the fucking bad guy. Thanks, Fable. But anyway. I did say in the description of this broadcast, exactly, Lucian, nothing wrong with being a weirdo. So says us weirdos. Indeed. Let us be weird together. I don't know what the hell that was. Never mind me. There we go. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that. All right. So, I did mention in the description of this stream that there was at least one example in reality of somebody attempting a redemption arc. Full warning, I'm going to be dipping my toes briefly into real-world socio-political dialogue at this moment. If that's your cue to jump out, go right on ahead. I completely understand. I am not an expert in these things. It might not be viewed as welcome conversation or observation. That's okay. I get it. I don't get a lot of viewers as it is anyhow. So you're not going to step on my toes. That, and how could you? You're watching this digitally, virtually. You're not in my house. Sorry. But there is a fellow who is attempting to make a kind of redemption arc for himself. And he's doing so apparently by means of starting to do this podcast. I am referring to America's own American Psycho, Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom has a podcast now. Why? Why does this California governor now have a podcast? For what reason did he decide to do this? There is maybe the idea that this is a California guy doing a California thing, trying to grab up some of the limelight, some of the spotlight. Okay, I could maybe go for that as a partial explanation. But I think anyone with more than 3 brain cells to knock together can recognize that Newsom is a interesting political creature, a chameleon. He's trying to adapt. Given what we saw, the power and influence of podcast networks and podcast shows had over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, especially with regards to the most recent American presidential election cycle, people have finally come around to recognizing broadly in the political sphere, socio-political sphere, that podcasts have a great deal of influence on the everyday American, on the everyday listener, on the everyday consumer of media content. Why are podcasts so powerful in this way? A couple of reasons. For one, especially the long-term ones, or the not long-term, the long-running ones. That's an awful lot of time that you're on air talking without a whole lot of restrictions. So if you're going to be on air for any amount of time, day to day, or even maybe once a week, if that's what you restrict it to, that's an awful lot of space in which you have to be genuine. You have to be genuine. You have to be authentic. This sort of thing doesn't always necessarily work well for the political class. Why? Well, because for decades and decades, howdy, Sarge, greetings. For decades now, political figures have been trained up to operate off of snapshots and sound bites. I'm borrowing a term from Dan Bongino there, because for a long time he talked about what are campaigns. Campaigns are snapshots and sound bites. And that's an absolutely correct observation, because that's how campaigns ran for time out of mind. A podcast, though, is more than a soundbite or a snapshot. Oh, Weaver's going to join. Good. A podcast is you throw yourself in front of whoever the hell will listen. Because podcasts are most successful when they are widely, broadly accessible, when they are transparent, and when the host is able to actually continue to provide interest, entertainment, or information over an extended period of time. Can Gavin Newsom do that? I don't know. I haven't listened to his show. Will I? Yes. I intend to listen to at least a couple of episodes because I want to know what this snake oil salesman is up to. Now, you may wonder, why did Newsom decide to start his own podcast? Well, because even a creature as fickle as he can catch the scent of what just happened in the last couple of years with the socio-political influence power of podcasts and recognize, oh, that was effective for the people on the other side of the aisle. It's not as though he couldn't, take a look at where the winds were shifting. All he had to do was follow the smoke rising from the Palisades. Too soon? Too bad. And see that the smoke and wreckage of the burning California countryside and cityscapes was drifting in the direction of podcasts. Good, Sarge. Dan, Belgian Dan, medicated, lubricated YouTuber. Good to see you here, brother. So Newsom sees this, and one of the first guests he has on is Charlie Kirk. Now, I did catch a clip from that episode. I've only seen a 3-minute clip. And in that clip, Charlie Kirk is kind of pouncing and bouncing and bouncing and bouncing on Newsom's head. See, Byron, what did I say about the grounded bean addiction? Yes, Sean Bean, coffee bean. Caffeine. It's good. So Charlie Kirk is like I said, bouncing off of Gavin Newsom's skull repeatedly. I only watched / listened to 3 minutes of this, giggling my head off the whole time. But I've also seen clips from back in the day when Adam Carolla did the same thing to Gavin Newsom on Carolla's show when he interviewed Gavin Newsom as the mayor of San Francisco, recently made into or elected the governor of California. Adam Carolla bounced off of his head repeatedly. So how does this fellow keep changing the direction he's aiming in and finding success? Well, because he is a chameleon. He should never be able to escape 2020. No, he should not. And that's why I don't think this is going to work out for him the way he's hoping. I don't think Newsom gets to have the redemption arc he's looking for. Yep, Dan, I was talking about Sean Bean before, hence the ground beans. Gavin Newsom exists in a state, and I don't mean the state of California, I mean the state of reality, where attempting this podcast thing, I don't think it's going to work out for him the way that he's hoping or thinking. Redemption only is available if it is genuinely sought. And I don't think he's genuine about it at all. Just like I don't think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was genuine when she was asking people from her own district or on Instagram or wherever it is that she does her bullshit online, asking people, hey, people who voted for me and voted for Donald Trump, what is it about him that made you vote for me? Or what do you think I could do more to garner your support? She doesn't really care. He doesn't really care. Lucian says, I wouldn't say he's going for forgiveness, more that his past is forgotten or ignored. I think that's what he's hoping for, is that he can use this podcast venue as a way to move on past what he has done previously. But it's not going to work out for him. It's just not. Because at no point, unlike Boromir in the Fellowship of the Ring, who admitted to what he did or was going to do, he admitted to what he was about to partake of. Unlike Darth Vader, who looked back and forth between Luke and the Emperor in that Force lightning cage, as the Emperor was zapping the shit out of Luke, and looking back and forth and going, oh shit, I've partaken of this. I've been a part of this. At no point has either Gavin Newsom or AOC actually stood up and said, I have contributed to the problem here. Shit. I did the wrong thing. I made life harder for people. I did the wrong thing and it hurt people. I fucked up. Sarge hits the nail on the head. Redemption requires repentance. It's why the Wicked Witch of the West melted at the touch of pure water in The Wizard of Oz, because she was a creature of wickedness and willful evil. She had no ounce of repentance or self-awareness by the time she was doused. None. Look, folks, I've made plenty of jokes about the state of my teeth. One thing, however, that I always point out is I did it to myself. Poor diet. I didn't maintain proper hygiene. Eating lots of sugary shit. I'm a smoker. All right? I am in the state I am in, this, because of my own poor choices. And a few times when I was younger getting into fights. So I lost my first tooth as an adult. Getting into a pointless fucking fight my senior year of high school. But Gavin Newsom, doing the podcast is not going to help him. Not unless he uses that podcast to say plainly and for everyone to see and hear, yeah, I fucked up. I shouldn't have done X, Y, or Z. And what I did caused X, Y, or Z damage to people of group A or B. If you didn't do anything, then you've got nothing to apologize for. And let's be clear that that's another thing to go in on. Look, yeah, Sarge, it was. But it was a pointless fight, and that's a story for another time. Newsom was one of the biggest cheerleaders for this DEI nonsense. About talking about how people in the modern day, today, should apologize for the things done by their ancestors. Fuck that. I didn't do it. We didn't do it. The people who were responsible for all of that pain and that suffering, they're long since dead. Don't throw the tab for their bill on the rest of us now. I'm not paying it. Period. But he has never taken a moment to say, shit, I should not have laid that at your feet, sir or ma'am. Sorry. He's never once said, yeah, I contributed to that. My bad. No. Not once. With the whole French Laundry situation during COVID lockdowns, giving exemptions to Hollywood studios to continue operating and having catering services on the sidewalks outside of the studios down Hollywood Boulevard. Granting those people exemptions and licensure to allow people to vend food. Meanwhile, across the street from that studio parking lot, there's a small eatery that wants to reopen, and they're told no, they're denied, and they end up going under. Why? Because they're not amongst the pretty privileged people. No apology to them. None. No apology for getting caught twice violating his own lockdown rules in the state of California against going to dining establishments. None. No apology, not even a recognition that what he did was hypocritical bullshit. And he's going to get called to the mat on this repeatedly if he keeps bringing in people like Charlie Kirk to this podcast. And what is he going to say? He's going to say, well, we didn't know better. Well, you know better now. Okay? Can you at least admit that what you did was wrong? Yes, a lot of places went under during COVID lockdowns all over the world. Yes, Dan, they did. Good to see you with the Rumble Green icon next to your name there, brother. Because I am using Rumble Studio, so I can see who's on which service as they chat. And right now we have 1 viewer on YouTube and 5 on Rumble. Sarge says, many Polacks, Micks, and Gonzanos weren't even in the country yet during slavery. How can white have to pay black reparations? Well, let's also go further back and say, well, how many Gauls and how many Celts were enslaved by people of North Africa? I'm not going to get into that. You know why? Because those people are long dead. That's why I've made the joke many a time to my coworkers. You know, I've got no hard feelings against the English who domineered and dominated the Irish people back when my family was still living in Ireland. You know why? Because they're all dead. They didn't do that to me, personally. No. So why do I give a shit? Although I will say the folks who were responsible for murdering Doctor Who the last couple of seasons, those Englishmen can suck it. Actually, don't. I don't want to say that to them because they might be intrigued and want to. Fucking Chudy Gatwa and fucking... Anyway, sorry. Give me back Doctor Who, you bastards. Anyway. But is redemption even possible for someone like Gavin Newsom? Not right now. Not as things currently stand. At least not in my view. Now, who am I? Just the storyteller. I'm just one schmuck who lives in the middle of the country. I live in Minnesota. And it's funny because apparently Newsom had the governor of my state on as his most recent podcast guest. And Timmy Walls, Tampon Tim, got into a back and forth saying, well, these people who are talking to the Joe Rogan types and this manosphere types, can't we just put them all back under a rock? Come and try to put me under a rock, you fuckwit. I live here. I'm one of your constituents, Walls. Fuck yourself. Again, I'm in territory I'm not usually familiar with right now. I'm in socio-political dialogue, and this is not my forte. I don't enjoy it. I keep abreast of it. I keep informed on it as much as I possibly can, but I don't enjoy it. I'd rather go back to talking about my books. Talk about Boromir and Frodo, Gandalf. Gandalf was a prick. I don't know if you folks are going to be on side with me on this, but Gandalf chose poorly when he told Frodo to carry the ring to Mordor. He chose poorly. The ring should have been put in Sam's hands because Sam would have just been like, all right, let's get this thing the fuck rid of. But thankfully, Sam was the hero at the end of the day anyway. Dave Allen. Huh. I don't know that name. Lucian, on the Discord, send me some links. Because I'm not familiar with that Dave Allen fellow. I should check that out. Boy, wouldn't that be a weird but great interview. Gavin Newsom's podcast, his guest today, Sir Boromir of Rohan. You know, that's or yes, Samwise. Get Samwise Gamgee on there. Not Sean Astin, all right? Samwise Gamgee. Get someone willing to play that characterization, that personification of the character from the books or from the movies. Take your pick. And have that Samwise sat in the chair to look at Gavin and go, French laundry? What's that? Sounds fancy. Do you have potatoes? Yes, potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. The meme lives. Hey, I would watch that podcast episode. I'd watch it on loop. Samwise Gamgee talking about, you know what you need that would really be a great bumper, like money crop here in California? You got to grow some blowweed. Have Gandalf, I guarantee, would visit the Shire in California plenty often if they had his blowweed available. 30-something media, greetings and salutations. Welcome back once again to the Storyteller's Corner. Bad timing. I'm probably going to be wrapping up here in the next 10 to 15 minutes, but it's always good to have you pop in. It was good to see you and the missus on your program yesterday, talking about the Malkuth, or the Malith, or what sounded to me like the Malith. And the creature you were describing put me in mind of a creature from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, one of the thought forms. 29 to 32. 29 to 32. It reminded me of a creature from the third Bardo, as referenced in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. By the way, Chris Bores, quit saying tulpa, you piece of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. Tibetan folklore and mythology is not something for you to bandy about and play with like some kind of Hot Wheels car, you piece of shit. The angry video game nerd, the ghost doctor. Go cock yourself. The fuck is wrong with you? Using these terms you've got no concept of because you don't actually have the material to read through and comprehend because you haven't got 5 active brain cells to knock together in your skull, you grifting piece of shit. Anyway, now that I'm done with that scream, what you were referring to, 30-something, was a Malith. Go ahead and clip that, folks. Got on Substack because of Josh here, says Sarge. Oh, yes, thank you. Oh, you caught the replay. Good. Oh, sorry. You were talking to 30-something. Sorry. I thought that was my mistake, sorry. I'm a spurg. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Or on your screen right now. I've got to go back and watch the replay of 30-something's stream as well. Substack. Yes, Lucian is on Substack as well. Oh, wait, 30-something. Are you on Substack? Okay, I'll have to look at you. I'll have to look you up. And hey, Lucian. Construction mechanics and diagrams and blueprints are always worthy of taking your time to produce professionally and accurately so that we have something tangible that we can actually build. You can't build if you don't have plans. Um, and Dan, whoa, that was amazing. Were you talking about the quick little brief screed there about Chris Boers, the ghost doctor? Let me tell you something. I didn't know about that guy until one of the Kino Casino Classics clips got thrown up into my suggested for you videos on my YouTube feed. And I watched Chris Boers through Kino Casino Boys, the Kino Boys, PPP, and Andy Worski poking fun at the guy. And, I couldn't really get through much of what Boers was saying because Worski pauses every 20 seconds in order for them to lay into the guy, which is hilarious. It's amusing. I find it infinitely entertaining and enjoyable to listen to while I'm at work, but I wanted to listen to the original material. So I looked up the Angry Video Game Nerd. I found the Ghost Doctor videos, and I listened to like 3 or 4 of them. And he goes on these tangents about tulpas. My God. He talks about tulpas and he references the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but he never actually shows the fucking book on screen. It's like, do you actually have a copy? Do you own a copy of this? Now, mind you, I don't have the best copy. I've got the Oxford University Press second printing, okay? This isn't the original. This is not the first printing. It's not one of the original printings. And to my great shame, I have not been able to find an original printing of this book, of this tome, for less than $400. I don't have that kind of budget. I would love to have that kind of budget, but I don't. Will I eventually? I don't know. I may eventually squirrel away money so I can get an original first printing. It would be worth it. Just to have it for my mythology collection, it would be worth the investment. But man, I couldn't keep it down here. I'd have to put it in a like a fire safe box just to keep it safe and secure and unfucked with by my kids. VGN is usually best at just talking about Genesis games. Yeah, I that's a weird career coursework for him to have gone through. But so I listened to a couple of his videos talking about ghosts and specters and ghasts and poltergeists and different types of hauntings. It's like, look, man, you're throwing out a lot of terms from mixed mythologies. He's throwing out, again, I say tulpa, because he has a definitive lack of understanding of what a tulpa, of thought form, actually is. And the fact that he glosses over it so casually without delving into the actual folklore and the history of tulpas in the Tibetan faith and either the Tibetan faith or in Shintoism. They also had what they refer to as tulpa or tulpa, where the only real phonetic difference is a longer U sound. But in Japanese mythology and legendarium, tulpas are formulated through collective thought and belief and prayer and ritual, whereas in the Tibetan form of the religious understanding and legendarium of tulpas, they are formed not from multiple people thinking about or believing in something, but one singular person, if they have a fiercely held belief that it can end up channeling the energies required to start to coagulate into a vague form that then attaches itself to negative energies. Negative energies, in accordance to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, are energies that are created during conflict, warfare, death, and childbirth. That's it. That's all that's covered in the third bardo, which is the realm from which the tulpa are crafted and their entire folklore is based upon. God's sakes, get your shit together, dude. if you're going to throw these terms out there, at least have an appreciation and an understanding that's better than surface level. I don't go on long tangents about Japanese folklore and mythos. Why? Because I've only just started delving into the topic of Shintoism and the many myths and creatures that have cropped up historically throughout the land of Nippon in even recently discovered history. When by recently, I'm talking like 600 to 800 years worth of mythology. And trust me, this doesn't go over even a fraction of it, but it's a good starter spot for me. There's a lot to go over, which is why I don't throw the terms out there willy fucking nilly like Chris fucking Bores. You can pay for me to cleanse your house over Skype. Get the fuck out of here. Sorry. I'm going to have one more smoke before I close it up for the day. I did not mean to go off on those tangents. And look, I'm sure the guy's a nice enough guy in person. I'm sure that if I met him, I probably wouldn't spend so much time and energy growling at him, but are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? I know that there's eventually, for myself, going to have to come an eventual redemption arc, because I can be a real piece of shit when I go off on these tangents. But Chris Bores could have a redemption arc as well. He could come to terms with the fact that he is himself setting up his clientele for quite the fall. That he is milking their fears and their ignorance and their misunderstandings of matters spiritual or spectral. Manipulating in an underhanded way their lack of understanding of legendarium, mythos, and folklore in order to turn a quick buck. Perhaps he'll get his redemption arc. We shall see. Jesus. Cancer much, Josh? No, not that I'm aware of. My name's not Boogie2988. I'm not going to make that claim. But I'm throwing a few stray shots out there today, and it kind of feels nice to get it off my chest. But at the same time, I can't help but thinking, well, of course I can freely take these shots. I'm tiny. I'm a relative nobody. There's nothing at risk for me. It calls back to what Lucian was saying before, what Lucian and I were going back and forth about before. One of the reasons that I don't feel that I'm at any risk by saying these things or taking these stray shots is because, yeah, I am a relative nobody. But if somehow one of these people that I'm taking shots at would come across this material and be like, well, hey, what'd you mean when you said that, this, and that, and the other thing? I meant this, that, and the other thing. Do you want me to lie about it? Or try to back up and say, well, I didn't mean that. No, I meant every fucking word of it. I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to try and apologize for. This is the stream of my thoughts. If I'm wrong, correct me. Because guess what? I'm no genius. I could be wrong. You know? Gavin Newsom. Even he could prove me wrong. I could be wrong about him. Maybe this is a genuine attempt maybe it's a genuine attempt to try and correct his record moving forward. But I'm not going to accept it as a genuine attempt if there's no mea culpa, if there's no accepting responsibility for the poor choices and the poor actions that he undertook previously that caused direct and indirect harm to people, either at his insistence and urgence or based and predicated upon his inaction, one or the other. If the guy really wants to have a redemption arc, perhaps he could promote that in the state legislature for the state of California. Perhaps he could talk to some of the folks in the House and the Senate in the state of California, members of his own party, and say, "Hey, look, guys, we've maybe gone a little overboard on some of the stuff that I've been rubber stamping for you guys in the Democratic Party to just blanket pass and cause the absolute hellishness that is the lives that we lead here in the Golden State, as it were. Maybe we need to actually listen to some of the stuff and suggestions that the people on the other side of the aisle have been screaming in our faces for years that we've flatly ignored because we've been able to afford to ignore them. After all, they're in a persistent and constant and perpetual minority. Why would we ever listen to them? But maybe we should listen to them for a change." Is there a possibility for that? I don't know. I'm certainly not inclined to believe that it is so. And I think of Lucian says, I would say the benefit of the doubt has already been spent. Yes, by and large, it has been. And thanks to, Frank Herbert, we understand from the teachings of Dune, when you are in power, I appeal to your I appeal to your sensibilities, for it is to my benefit. When I am in power, I appeal to my own sensibilities, for it is to my benefit. Or something like that. I forget what the exact quote is, but effectively it's, hey, when I'm in charge, or when you're in charge, I appeal to your sense of honor and duty because I get something out of that. But then when I'm in charge, I'm not going to let you appeal to anything because, again, that's to my benefit. And that has been the behavior of Gavin Newsom and many of his cohorts for years out of mind. But I don't necessarily want to go down that path of assuming that it can't get better. As long as there is a just and loving God, then redemption is possible. But redemption is a choice. Boromir chose to stand the gap, to be redeemed. Vader, Anakin, stood the gap. He chose to be redeemed. Both knew it would cost them dearly. And these are fictional characters. And the reason they stand as cultural champions is because even though they were fictional, they are creations entirely of imagination. We can only create that which we can imagine. Some people have far more powerful and loose imaginations and creative impulses than others. I'm assisted by the fact that I'm a schizophrenic. I have an unfair advantage in that regard. Sometimes I just pull from my own hallucinations and throw it out there. Where do you think Quoth came from? Okay, I have to see that fucking beaky fellow once or twice a week at least. That's something else to just throw out there and let you be aware of, folks. You guys may view Quoth as a fascinating antagonist from the realms of Amelia City. I look at him as an unfortunate roommate in my skull. But that's for another time. Anyway, before I get going, any last questions before I sign off for the day here, folks? I'll have one last smoke. I know I said that when I started the last one, but I'll give you the opportunity. Yes, he does. He's got style. He's got flair. He's got panache. He's also got to start paying me fucking rent. He can't keep getting away with it. I do have style, Lucian. What kind of style is it, though? Gangnam style. Anyway, sorry. I don't know why I did that. Well, thank you, Sarge. Yeah, Quoth is something else. He is something else. I've tried to get rid of him a number of times over the years. Where is it? Oh yeah, I put it upstairs. Well, I mean, he's not working for free. He gets paid in blood and madness. Because not everyone who falls prey to the things that live in the shadows of Amelia is killed. Some of them are just driven insane. There's a reason why Ravenwood Asylum exists. Ravenwood exists because not everyone dies in Amelia. And yes, the asylum is called Ravenwood. There will be a story coming along down the pike. I have an outline for it in which notebook? I think it's this one. Nope. Not that one. Is this one? No. I think it's this notebook. Come on. I think it's this notebook. Maybe not. Okay, I think this is it. Got the beginnings of an outline for a history of Ravenwood Memorial Asylum. I've got the basic sketch outline for a fictional historical story explaining the background of Ravenwood Asylum in Amelia County, just outside of Amelia City, just north of the city proper. But I haven't actually written the story yet. Lucian, death is not the worst fate, and neither is it the escape of madness. Yes. Sarge, I need an illustration of that haunted avian pimp game show announcer on the wall of my Guinness room. Have you got Quoth merch? I do not, though I should consider that. And yeah, Lucian, I have considered trying to put together just like a poster of the cover art for the Justice of Amelia. I'm sure I could talk to Crystal and see if she can blow it up for me, or if she can have it blown up and then have it like reproduced and made available. I'm sure I could talk to her and see if she'd be down for it. It's one of the best covers she's ever done for me. Um, but I also know she's got a lot of work on her plate. Partially thanks to me. I've been referring people to her. But I may have actually a copy of the because before she went and sent me the final approved version, she did send me a couple of different versions of what would ultimately become the cover. Gotta see if I've got them still in my picture files. I'll have to find them later. But I do know she sent me a couple of different possible covers for the Justice of Amelia. But the one I decided, the one I finally selected, she did brilliant work. Buy his merch, and his books. Anyway, but yeah, I'll have to look into seeing what I can do for a reproduction of the cover for that. But anywho, that's going to wrap it up for me for today, folks. Folks, it has been excellent once again coming to you and discussing certain matters bookish. Large carriage printers. That would be pretty neat if I get a hold of the when I look through my files on my computer here. If I find the version of the cover art that Crystal sent me before she put the title on the cover, I will send that to you, Sarge, at my earliest convenience. Uh, but I got to get upstairs and get kid little budget up from her nap because she's been down for close to 2.5 hours here for her nap, and can't let her go to the 3 hour mark or she won't go to bed tonight at a decent time. So for me, that's going to wrap it. I'd like to thank you, gents, for stopping in once again to this particular Storyteller's Madness. Thank you for listening. I ask that you take care of yourselves, and as always, keep reading. Oh, wait. One's Rumble Friend, one's Real Friend. Oh, cool. Your Rochester days? Oh, cool. Managing the budget? What do you mean, Lucian? Really quick. When you say, would this be called managing the budget, what do you mean? You can clarify for me later on Discord. Oh, yes, Malia. Yeah. Managing the budget. Bairns. But anyway, thanks again, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.